What if Germany invaded America? The fact that the United States of America and Germany fought each other so heavily during the back half of the Second World War means that hypotheticals about the two countries in modern times, or indeed throughout history, are some of the most popular on the entire internet. As two of the most respected countries in the Western world today, and with the US and Germany having been allies for over 30 years since the Berlin Wall fell and Germany was reunified, is there any chance of Germany attacking or invading America today? And how would America respond? Today, we're going to be taking a look at everything that would happen if Germany invaded America. Before we get into the more modern era, let's take a look back at when it was most likely for Germany to attempt an invasion of the continental United States. Given that America mostly stayed out of World War II until 1942, following the attack on Pearl Harbor by the Japanese forces, Germany wasn't initially interested in provoking America during the first couple years of the war, only officially declaring hostilities in 1941. Even then, most of the German high command agreed that openly trying to attack or invade the United States directly would be ill-advised at that point in time. With much of Germany's forces obviously focused on Europe, they wouldn't be able to commit enough men to a target that was comparatively so far away. Instead, much of Germany's focus was on American shipping lanes, utilizing submarine warfare and their fleet of U-boats to strike at any potential American targets in the Atlantic Ocean. Hitler himself, ironically, did not see the United States as much of a threat at first. He believed that the American public was too diverse and filled with races he was prejudiced against, and thus his bigotry caused him to personally not have much interest in bringing the fight to America. Hitler did eventually reveal that he saw the United States as a potential target if the Germans were able to conquer the USSR, with some historians claiming that Hitler was obsessed with the idea of seeing New York City in flames, a symbol of America's progress, going up in smoke. The rest of the German military power structure had different ideas, however, recognizing that America's incredible productive capacities, factories, and farmland would be useful under German control, if they could somehow capture them. This led to several plans being proposed, and the German military focusing particularly on developing a bomber that could consistently travel across the Atlantic, deliver its deadly payload, and then return to German-controlled soil. Several designs for aircraft of this caliber were completed, but Germany eventually had to back down from this bombing plan as their air force was needed elsewhere, and there wasn't enough secure German outposts to launch enough planes at America to make such a brazen attempt at bombing worthwhile. Furthermore, a huge factor for any of the German plans of attacking the American mainland was the status of America's ongoing war with Japan, hoping that their allies would be able to weaken America's morale and military forces enough that Germany could easily make gains invading the American mainland. During this waiting process, the only officially recognized landings of German soldiers on American soil was during Operation Pastorius, in which 8 German saboteurs landed in New York and Florida after traveling by U-boat, with the intent to sabotage America's harbors that were directly sending troops to aid with the war effort in Europe. Luckily for the United States, all 8 German agents were captured before their plans could be carried out. 6 of the 8 agents were executed after being put on trial as spies rather than prisoners of war, and the only reason the other 2 agents lived to eventually be returned to Germany after the war was because they turned on their fellow teammates and supplied intel to the American war effort. Following all of this, as it became clear that the Japanese forces were not doing enough to weaken America's defenses, Germany abandoned the idea of taking the American continent, as their U-boat losses were too high and they increasingly had to focus on defending against the advance of the Soviet Union. And by the end of the war, Germany's main military strategy had become surrendering to the United States, as they saw that as a preferable option to surrendering to the Soviet Union's forces. So, if a German invasion of America wasn't possible in the past, is there any chance that it could happen in the future? The answer is likely not. Germany is still the most populated and largest country in the European Union, but their position on the world stage is vastly different than it was during the era of the Second World War, and America's military strength and global influence have increased exponentially exponentially since then. Germany is no longer the military superpower that it was at the start of the 20th century, and has settled into the role of being a key ally to America in Europe with multiple trade agreements and collaborations on scientific projects and climate change research. To suddenly throw this partnership out and destroy decades of peace between the United States and all the members of the European Union would be a huge gamble, one that likely wouldn't end well for Germany. Not even counting all of the potential military responses that America could give, given how many bases they have in Europe by this point, but America could be equally as dangerous just with economic sanctions and tariffs. If Germany suddenly broke the peace with America, the United States would almost certainly begin pressuring every other European nation to cease trade with Germany and do everything economically possible to get them to stand down and surrender. Surrounded on all sides by enemies and unwilling trade partners is a situation that Germany would not ever want to find themselves in again. So what would happen if Germany ignored all logic and did decide to invade? Well, the full might of the US military would likely be marshaled to defend the East Coast, with missile defense systems protecting major cities such as Boston and New York, and any imminent German forces likely being intercepted before they had even crossed the Atlantic. American military bases in Europe would immediately spring into action and begin making plans for counterattacks on Germany that would be intended to cripple them severely enough that they would need to pull out of their attempt at an invasion. Germany would be extremely outmatched both from a technology perspective and from a pure numbers perspective, meaning that their only hope for any kind of permanent gains in such a confrontation would have to come through unconventional means, whether that's a complete surprise attack using unknown technology, or a military strategy that would be able to outwit the entirety of the United States military. Either way, Germany would need to try something truly unique if they were to have any hope of making an impact when going up against one of the biggest military superpowers on the entire planet. At the end of the day, an invasion of America by Germany in the modern era just isn't that likely to happen. Any invasion of the United States by a foreign power would be an incredibly risky move, and if any country were going to attempt it, Germany is likely pretty low on that list. However, discussing these hypotheticals is an interesting thought experiment, and the fact remains that if Germany did decide to invade the United States of America, it would be one of the most surprising events in world history. So if you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and let us know down in the comments what you think would happen if Germany ever invaded America. As always, I've been Josh Busker, and this has been Life's Biggest Questions.